Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside Dave
Hello.
and John.
Hello.
No Aaron tonight. Aaron has family matters to attend to, so he won't be joining us unfortunately. But we send our um, don't know what I'm trying to say there. Send our regards. I don't really know what I'm trying to say.
Best wishes.
Best wishes. I don't know. So
We
unfortunately he's
send
not
our
with us
love.
tonight. Send our love. That'll do. Perfect. Even better. Yeah, not as formal. Guys, how you doing? Dave, how are you?
All good, all good. Yeah, can't really complain. Looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, we have a doubleheader, one of the most probably important weekends in the Elite Ice Hockey League, especially for the Belfast Giants and the Sheffield Steelers this coming weekend as they face off in a doubleheader here in Belfast, the SSE Arena. More on that probably later on as we discuss standings in a few minutes' time. John, how are you doing?
Good. Had a nice quiet weekend. Missed the Guildford weekend with being back over in Scotland for a quick little family catch up. But no, other than that, good. Life admin and work admin and everything gets in the way. But sure, love of life.
That's it, indeed. It does indeed, and it just gets busy. Things just kind of build up, and you just have to do what you have to do.
Well, as you can see behind me, my life is now sort of 70% baby boxes.
I do see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put the jerseys up here to make it look like I still have a hockey life. I might in the future, but the reality is really over this side.
Yeah, that's true. Not too much longer to go with you guys. Another, what, 10 weeks is it so?
11 weeks.
11. It'll fly in. It'll fly in.
It's
Guys, it has been a busy 2 weeks since our last recording. Tonight's episode, we will obviously cover our usual. Start off with looking at the standings across the Elite League and in the NHL. And I suppose just a precursor, we know that podcasts, when you listen to a podcast or you decide to watch a YouTube video or whatever you decide to do in your spare time, you try to do it to kind of almost avoid real life situations sometimes and kind of a bit of a break from what's going on in the world. But obviously a couple of the stories we will be talking about in tonight's episode, both in period 2 and in period 3, will obviously be heavily influenced by what's currently going on in the world in the Ukraine. So just to kind of give you a heads up on that, we will talk about it because it's important stories to talk about, and we will touch upon it in both period 2 and period 3. But with that, guys, as I mentioned, we will start off as we always do, and we'll take a look at the current standings across the UK, across the world, I suppose, starting with the UK in the Premier Sports Elite Ice Hockey League, sitting in first place. I've noticed they've now put X's on the Elite League website for those who have advanced already to the playoffs. So in first place is Belfast Giants with 41 games played and 66 points. The Sheffield Steelers move into second with 40 games played and 64 points. Cardiff are sitting in third with 44 games played and 59 points. Nottingham are in fourth with 42 games and 44 points. Coventry in fifth with 37 games and 37 points. Dundee sitting sixth currently with 38 points and 38 games, 37 points. Glasgow are in seventh with 38 games played and 36 points. Guildford in 8th with 40 games played, 34 points. Manchester in 9th with 40 games played and 29 points. And Fife in 10th with 40 games played and 26 points. Okay, bit of change there in the league, especially at the top. Belfast Giants taking over a top spot, taking over the Sheffield Steelers this past weekend. So let's get your thoughts on that first. John, we'll come to you first. Obviously, as Belfast Giants fans, we are delighted with this change. What's your thoughts on this?
Thought I better just change the hat there. We're going to talk about Belfast Giants. 100%. I mean, you can't look better than a triple header weekend and walking away with 6 points this last weekend. That's absolutely enormous as far as the league is concerned, and it puts down a marker for what is going to be an enormous weekend here in Belfast with two grade A games against the second place team in the league for the first time this season, I think. In the Sheffield Steelers, it's certainly the first time this season that the Giants have sat top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, top of the table. The top two really are the top two. This is where it's going to be decided. Cardiff Devils have had a couple of pretty poor results, similar to the Sheffield Steelers. A couple of big losses against Dundee, who are, I mean, when you look at that middle of the table, that is a team on the move. That is a team on a mission. But top end is where it's at for me. I'm Belfast Giants through and through, and I don't doubt that there'll be 4 points at the end of this weekend coming.
Let's hope so. Let's hope indeed. Dave, let's get your thoughts on the same question. Again, we are biased, but we are Belfast Giants fans through and through. I mean, we're happy, obviously, where we are. What do you think? Over obviously, we're coming into a very tough bunch of games now coming up over the next few weeks. We've got Sheffield doubleheader and Nottingham doubleheader, followed by another Sheffield doubleheader. We've got loads of games. We've got a lot of tough games coming up. What's your thoughts?
The big thing definitely has to be the fact now it's no longer worrying about other teams and other scores. It's all in the Giants' control. It's up that they can do it now. They don't need to worry about other results going their way. If they focus on their games and win the games they can put it to bed. They don't need to worry about Sheffield tripping up or anything. They've already got the right level of games in hand, the right level of games structured to get them through to the end. Again, same as John, the big shocker. We'll say shocker. I don't think it's too much of a shock because seeing them play in Dundee, they are definitely a team that can win, and they have done a phenomenal job over the last few weeks, taking points from everybody. And I think that you're going to see them continue to move. I think they're the one to watch going into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point. Yeah, it is. I think from my point of view, I think you're right. There's those underdog teams, or shall we say underdogs in inverted commas, but they are for those underdog teams to take these points and these big points out of teams moving forward. I mean, it's tough. I suppose some argument that some fans in the Sheffield camp are arguing that that there's been a bit of a slump since the obviously that defeat against the Cardiff Devils in the Challenge Cup semi-final, and some of the fans came out and were like, oh, sky's falling and stuff, but and a lot of them have echoed similar thoughts after this past weekend, only pulling 2 points out of a 4 point weekend. I mean, 2 points out of a 4 point weekend, on a normal weekend would be fine, but obviously coming to this tail end of the season, all these points are important. I mean, moving forward, we need to make sure that, each game we take and each we can't afford to have a slip up, I suppose, moving in towards this tail end.
You say about a 2 point out of 4 weekend being not too bad. The problem is that's when you've got fans in Sheffield looking at results in Belfast, 6 from 6.
Yeah, I mean
that is a disaster for them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In a normal situation, at an earlier point in the season, taking 2 points of a 4 point weekend would be acceptable. That's what I'm saying. We're at a point now, though, where what I was trying to allude to was that we're at a point in the season now where a 2 point weekend out of a 4 point possible weekend is not acceptable, because especially if you're fighting for the championship where they are, and you're within points. It's every point you can get is valuable. Hence the fact that they were able to pull 1 point from each of those two games. Obviously going into overtime, it was lucky to go into that overtime section to at least grab those 1 points in each of those games, because it was looking doubtful at one point, especially on that. I think it was the Saturday game. It was looking doubtful they were even going to get into they were even going to pull the overtime, but. That's where we are.
Even you look at that and you look at what we've got ahead. We've only a few weeks left of league action to go. Just taking the Belfast Giants, for example, 13 league games left. Mm-hmm. 5 of those are against Sheffield.
Yep.
So Dave's 100% right. The results, as far as they go now, it's all in the Giants' hands.
Yep.
In much the same way, it's all in the Sheffield Steelers' hands as well. It's the team that can find form, and the team that finds the results is going to walk away with this league trophy.
Yeah, and the thing that surprises me when you look at the stats for the league as well, the goals for and goals against, it's like, how have the Giants not been top of the league before now? When you see that difference, when you compare it to Sheffield, the next biggest, you're sitting there with 167 goals for the Giants and only 77 goals against, and the goals against in Sheffield are 103. It's a big jump. And that's showing, that's the full team stats there. That's your goals for, obviously your entire team scoring, and then your defense is your team defense and through to your netminders. So they are amazing stats when you break it down. And it's not like there's a a thread, because as soon as there's a big jump there, 77 to 103, that's a hefty jump for goals against.
Yeah, 100%. Guys, just before we move on, let's just focus on the other parts of the league. Not to forget any of the other teams. Obviously, we're looking at the battle that's going on at the top. But just so much, even with that, there's a battle going on at the bottom too. Obviously to try and keep in form for those playoff spots. I mean, at the moment, Guildford look like they have a comfortable lead in there against the Manchester Storm in 8th and 9th. Do we see much changing in that point moving towards the end of the season? As John usually said, there's about 12 to 13 games left maximum of the season. Do we see much happening there between Guildford and Manchester? Do you think, are we seeing the league standings as they kind of going to be in terms of that bottom part?
I think it's tough to see anything changing in those bottom two. I think really unfortunately, unless Manchester find form out of nowhere, I don't know what Manchester's running looks like, but really they'd be in a position that they need to be playing Guildford as many times as possible if they're really looking to take that 8th spot. Glasgow are a team like Dundee who have started to find form. All of a sudden now take the most recent result for Glasgow, which I believe was an absolute drubbing for them in Coventry. Take that to one side. They have been finding wins. They've been finding dirty wins. They've also been finding good wins, good healthy looking wins as well. Coming into playoffs, I mean, that it's no better time for them to be hitting their stride than now for a team that started the season late. And we thought we're going to get to this point that we're still going to have 10 or 15 games left to play. Above the rest of the league, let alone everything else, but they seem to have caught up fairly well. COVID disruptions with the extra week being added on to the season hasn't really affected them too badly. If anything, it's probably started to hit the likes of the Giants more. We've got a couple of 3-3 or 3-4 weekends. We've got another one coming up this weekend. I think it's 3-3 this weekend. We've got Sheffield at home twice, and then we're straight over to Dundee for a game, and then the following week with the addition of the Challenge Cup final, which we're going to talk about later, it's another 3-game weekend. So there's a good run in coming, but those bottom teams, they don't have those extra games to play that we do, and the scheduling is looking like it's working in their favour.
Yeah, I mean, just to answer your question, John, they do play Guildford twice, but they do have Manchester do play Sheffield Steelers 4 games in a row, a Sunday, Wednesday, so it's 4 games in a row with Sheffield Steelers, so that will be a tough one.
That's an interesting one.
Yep.
The bottom of the table might be more interesting than I gave it credit for.
Yep. We will be watching those anyway, I'm sure with great interest. Guys, are we happy enough to...
You sounded like Palpatine at the end of episode 1 there. People watch your career with much interest.
Oh, the geeks on us.
There's a whole element of people listening to us who have no idea what I just spoke about.
I would say so. Guys, are we happy enough to move on from the standings and move across the pond?
Yep.
Great. We'll switch across then and look at the NHL standings as they currently are. We take a look at the wildcard spot standings rather than the full division or conference standings. So starting over in the Eastern Conference and Metropolitan Division, Carolina still sit top with 56 games played and 83 points. New York Rangers are in second with 57 games played and 77 points. And Pittsburgh in third with 58 games played and 77 points. In the Atlantic Division then, Florida sit top still with 57 games played and 83 points. Tampa are pulling back into contention on taking over that lead by 56 games played and 80 points. And Toronto then continue form in third place with 57 games played and 78 points. Wildcard spots for the Eastern Conference then currently held by Boston and Washington. Switching our attention over then to the western side of the country and looking at the Central Division, Colorado sit top still with 58 games played and 87 points, followed by St. Louis with 56 games played and 71 points, and Minnesota still holding third spot there with 55 games played and 69 points. Pacific in the Pacific Division, then Calgary sit top with 56 games played, 75 points. LA have moved in, are in second still with 58 games played and 71 points, and Vegas sit in third with 58 games played and 68 points. Wildcard spots held by Nashville and Dallas. Guys, before we talk about obviously our teams, our individual teams that we follow, just obviously looking at the divisions, I suppose. Looking at those different divisions and themselves. themselves. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, no real change at all for any of these divisions. I mean, they're still sitting, this top three are still the top three. They haven't moved. The wildcard spots maybe have changed around slightly in some ways. But I mean, it's quite, it's quite a strong statement whenever those three spots haven't really changed over the last couple of weeks. John?
Totally.
The
thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. Totally. Yeah. The thing that hopefully that is the sign of what's to come. If they're starting to settle in for everyone's run down to the playoffs. I would like it to continue that way. Wild came out of a bit of a rubbish run, but I think hopefully that's what we end up with as we go through the weeks. Now I know there's a huge amount of change possible, but there seems to be in both sides a bit of a drop after the current wildcard spots. There's a bit of a change up in the teams, less so in the Western. There's like a big jump in the Eastern. There's like a massive drop after Washington. Whenever you look at the sort of full rundown of the stats and points, there's like a big cliff that they've dropped off, which probably means that they're probably going to be the same. The Western not so much, but there is a similar thing happening, but after, like further back down, around the sort of fifth, sixth in the wild card. They're starting to see the points drop off, and hopefully that will mean that we'll see all our teams make it through.
It's as if you were reading my notes that I had down, because one of the comments I was gonna say was, if you did notice the wild card spots there in the in the Eastern Conference, the Eastern I always get this wrong. The Eastern Conference, yeah. Sorry. If you did look at that, as you say, Dave, there's a massive cliff where between the first and second, and drops into third. And there's a massive jump. Is it like something like maybe
13 points?
13 points. Yeah. I mean, that's a massive difference. John, let's go to you then. Obviously, you've got your team sitting, Predators sitting in this first wild card spot. How do you feel progression wise? Hold on to that spot. Do you think you're going to progress up and take over Minnesota and move them down, or what do you think?
Well, this is the thing. Like Dave said, there hasn't been a lot of change across the wild cards, and this is the one place that there has been, with the Preds and the Wild. I think really changing those positions quite regularly. Not helped by the Predators' run of form recently. We seem to go 2 wins, then we go between 2 and 4 losses, which isn't brilliant. But then we'll take a loss against the Kraken, for example, a team feeding at the bottom just above Arizona this season. But then we'll come back against San Jose with an 8-0 shutout win away from home, which is, I mean, where are we pulling that from? Where are we pulling an 8-0 win away in the Shark Tank from? I mean, that's wild. Well, it's not wild, it's Preds. But if we can continue on, the risk is, as Dave said, because there isn't that cliff edge on the wildcards, we might be able to scrape through in the confirmed slots, in those first 3 slots. Equally, we might only just make it, and we might not make it in the end at all. Like, we've seen teams go off the end towards the last run. We're into, I think, regular season, are we into the last 4 weeks? Of regular season. So you're talking every team probably has something like 15 to 20 games left. So you just don't know, especially over in the West. In the East, at least you've got the benefit, Marty, of knowing that the Leafs are going to have to probably cease trading as an organisation not to make playoffs this year.
Exactly.
Your big risk is that, maybe not a risk this year, is where do you meet Boston?
Boston's always seems to be. I've always said this every single year, is that when we come to the playoffs, if we come up against Boston, like, it always seems to be the real thorn in our sides. They always seem to just take it from us, either in the last game or at least in the last 2 games anyway. So yeah, it's a tough one. We're hoping, as you say, we do seem to be sitting at a really good point. And with we've talked about that cliff thing, even if we did drop down a bit and Boston took the position that Toronto were in, I like to think that we're comfortably, as you say, into that playoff spot. But yeah, I don't know what would have to happen in order for that to change at this point.
To not hit playoffs, but you're going to have to drop something like 15 points to
Yeah,
the
and you
likes of
can't.
Columbus and Detroit. That's
Yeah.
not happening.
It's not happening. No, it's not happening at all. Fingers crossed. I said it, so therefore it might. Dave, before we move on, let's get your thoughts finally before we move on. Obviously,
Yeah.
Wild.
Wild, they had a awful run over the last 10 games. They've 7 losses, which hasn't been nice. But again, similar story to John. Lost a few games. I think Edmonton we lost to, and obviously Calgary's on form, so we don't really mind that loss. But then we bounced straight back with a win in New York. So beating beating the Rangers, who are probably one of the on-form teams in the league. They have had in their 10 is like their last 10 is almost like a reverse order of the Wilds. They've had like 6 wins and 3-1, so they're performing pretty well. But the Wild seem to be struggling to find consistency. Can definitely still find the wins, but it's that trying to find consecutive wins. Ever since the All-Star break, they have struggled to get back into that form that they had just before. Hopefully, it's the lull before the playoffs, in which case we might see a bit of a bounce back if we get through to the first rounds, and that might be a change of fate. But we'll see.
We'll see indeed. As John said, there's not that many weeks left of regular season play. I did see today that the NHL, it's not actually in our running order. It wasn't really a big story or anything. But I did see today that the NHL released what they're calling a rebrand of the Stanley Cup. And I did see it today. It was the first images of the rebrand were shown today. So obviously the fact that they're doing that and getting those out and showing those around, obviously you can see how close we are now to Lord Stanley's Cup. So yep, we will wait and see. With that takes us to the end of our pre-game, shall we say. And with that, what we'll do is we'll just get stuck straight into our period 1 of hockey. Okay, period 1 is a roundup of hockey news from around the UK. We will look at we've got a couple of stories in this period, a couple of stories that have been, I suppose, a lot of talk, a lot of social media feedback from fans, a lot of social media, I suppose, engagement with fans in relation to some of these stories. But let's start with the first one. Obviously, since our last recording, and this is a well-known story that's obviously came out from that. This was from the first weekend of March, or last weekend of February, first start of March. The Coventry Blaze coach Danny Stewart was banned by the Elite Ice Hockey League after an outburst in a Sheffield Steelers clash. Danny Stewart was suspended for 1 game and fined following abusive incidents at Sheffield Arena last Sunday. The Sunday what would it have been? It was the second, third. 28th, was it? So I'm trying to work out what date that was. I should have the date down. Anyway, the Elite League disciplinary committee did dole out the punishment after it investigated an investigation that was sparked because of a video that was shown of the Steelers assistant clashing with the coach Carter Beston-Weil in the players' tunnel, and then following that, there was also comments made and a video that surfaced showing a hand gesture that Danny Stewart had made towards the players' bench as well on the same night. This caused a lot of chat, I suppose, on social media. A lot of fans were, I suppose, up in arms about what had actually happened, and the I suppose the sign and the sign that he made and stuff towards the bench, and people felt it was very offensive in terms of insulting to people with mental health, and a number of different issues around that. Guys, some interesting things from this, and I think John, you'd pointed this out, and maybe you can pull up on this one. In terms of what we've seen in terms of this ban, it was an interesting one because when the ban came out, it wasn't actually the next game that he got banned for. If that is not correct, he played the next game. He was on the bench. It was actually the game after the next game, which really shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, we say it shouldn't have happened. This is obviously a decision outside of DOPS. This is Hockey Ops. This is EIHL Hockey Ops have made the call to to suspend the coach for a game because of behaviour during the game and down the tunnel. To me, I can kind of accept why they've done what they've done on reflection, since we talked about this the first time. But again, if a player did something, you would expect them to take the ban that the next day or whatever. Like, as long as the team are given a heads up, I don't really understand why Danny Stewart couldn't have served his ban or his bench suspension the following game. I accept that the league have said that it's not fair for the team to expect to play without their coach. Danny's not the only coach on that team. There's assistant coaches there. There's player assistant coaches, the same way that there is in every team. If it was through a completely different set of circumstances, are they saying that without Danny Stewart, the Coventry Blaze wouldn't be expected to play? If his car broke down on the way to a game, would the game be called off because Danny Stewart wasn't there? I realise I'm throwing up apple and oranges. I'm trying to compare the two of them. It's not that simple, but it seems like an odd one when Dops can contact a team in the morning before a game and say, by the way, this guy's banned. He can't play tonight. Surely it's one rule for the coaches and the same rule for the players. It's just a very odd one. It's another one where there's a lack of transparency. Yet again, we're told that there was a fine attributed. How much was it? Was it 20p? Was it 20 quid? Like, what was it? What does the fine go towards? Again, same issues that I've had all season with Dops. Yet again, throw their head up when it comes to a decision made by hockey ops.
Yeah. Dave, in terms of, obviously the league clearly felt that the reputation was at stake, or something was at here if they didn't do something to, about obviously what had happened with Stewart. Obviously the foul mouth rant, which was witnessed by fans, and then obviously following that, obviously the hand gesture that was, as we mentioned. I mean, your thoughts on this? I mean, it was a very hot topic at the time on social media.
Yeah, it seemed to go from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. Yeah, okay, if people were offended. Yeah, he's, family sport, foul mouth stuff, fair enough. It's deserves something. The problem they have is that they don't have like a code of conduct for the league, for rep, just with what ground just bring a dispute. If that's what they're going down, that's really severe. If that's what they're going down, that's like proper suspension territory. Like, telling someone to leave. You're bringing the league into dispute. That's proper harsh. What they need to do is create a code of ethics that they all stand by. The same as the NHL. The NHL have this in place. And then they have to all agree to hold that level. And then if it breaches, then they can say you've breached the code of ethics. And there's going to be levels of fines, suspensions, very transparent things. Because that means that we don't have this ambiguity of he did this, he made the gesture, he was also foul mouthed. Should he got two different separate? They're two different instances. Should he have got a fine for one and a ban for the other, or a ban for both? Or there's things here, and because there's not this laid out, there are still things that you could call on this, like the whenever so there is the rule for if a coach goes to the bench, he gets banned for a game, and that's meant to be, and we've seen that with Coventry this season already. Wasn't Coventry where the fella left to fight, then got banned for a whole week of games? Nearly certain it was Coventry. Probably wrong. Probably got sued. Allegedly. But that is really tangible. You can, that's to do with the game. If they're going down this route, they have to be out in front of this. They should have been in front of this early. The idea of being a family sport and all that just isn't a new thing. If they're going to hold coaches to that as a league, then they really need to get together and actually create a code of ethics. On the other side, there's nothing stopping the club themselves stepping in here and doing stuff that impacts the club in a negative way. Yes, I know they're not going to want to lose points. They're not going to, want to do anything like that there, but they can fine their own coach for bringing their own club into dispute. Never mind league. To me, it seems that the league probably should have pushed Coventry to do something rather than stepping in themselves, because they have now basically this is now set a precedent where if something similar happens, if there's a maybe not the gesture, because it to me seems a bit of a weird one, how it came about and who it was aimed at and all that there, but being that the nature of being just foul mouthed near fans, just
See, this is my thing. This is the other thing. So, reading more behind this whole incident, this was what Danny Stewart did is twofold. Okay, and when I say what Danny Stewart did is I'm not throwing him down the river here. This is a high pressure sporting environment, and things happen and things get said. And I think that needs to be put to one side. What he did on the bench needs to be taken in one way. Now, admittedly, things got more heated because there was someone there with a camera and between the benches or behind one of the benches or whatever, and was able to take video footage of it. What happened down the tunnel, I don't doubt happens in 10 arenas around the Elite League. I don't doubt that it happens in the EIHL, and I don't doubt that it happens at rec hockey. The biggest problem that was created by all this is the fact that the person who wrote this story that we're reading from in the Sheffield Star, Bob Westerdale, was in the tunnel and took a video. From what I understand, now hopefully I've got this right, but he was in a position where he was at the ice end of that tunnel, and he was able to take photos, take video footage, and then that was put out into the public domain. Now, let's be perfectly honest, media have a role in this as well, and that's a very clear decision to make that public, to take something which was done down the tunnel in an area of privilege for players and staff that fans don't get to. Now, I accept that there was, as part of the story, there was a family of including children that were in earshot of this. The best part of it is that it's come out that the fan wasn't bothered in the slightest with what they heard or couldn't hear or whatever. It didn't really affect their night. They didn't care. The fact that this was put into the public domain then made it a bigger story, and that in itself isn't wrong. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but there has to be a professional judgment of what do I put into the public domain, what is actually in the interest of fans.
As a code of ethics.
Yes, and what is? I mean, that's going to impact on the professionals within the team. It's not going to impact on media covering it. And
you can indeed.
Let's look at Belfast. Look at Belfast just yesterday. Look at the reaction online from a couple of people in particular, because you had a journalist with a Belfast rag who decided to effectively announce a player signing, which we're going to talk about in a second, before the team had the opportunity. And you had an individual, I suppose it doesn't really matter if we out who it was, but Taff
on Twitter,
had a go. It's on Twitter, it's in the public domain. Taff had a go at him and said, surely this is for the team to announce before you do it. And I think rightly everyone got on the back of this journalist. And it's hilarious that when you look at the likes of podcasts that are out there as opposed to the traditional print media, which Bob Westerdale, the Sheffield Star, the Belfast Telegraph, Adam McHenry, they're all part of that traditional media, and consistently they're making decisions that aren't theirs to make, really, by putting the stuff out there. And I totally accept that there is another school of thought in there that anything to do with the sport is in public interest. That's their job. They're literally doing their job by doing this. But I think sometimes you are in a position of privilege. Teams don't have to give you access to players and for interviews and give you access to ice level. Certainly we don't get all that all the time. We have to go out of our way to ask for that. We're not traditional media. We're just four guys who like to come onto a podcast and talk about hockey. And look, we've been given our opportunities as well. I would never be in a position where I think I would do what these two guys have done. to put that out
Yeah.
there. That's a position of privilege, and I think that has to be taken on board.
But
But
random
again,
question.
with the
Based
story,
on
with
other-
the story that we're talking about, what was done on the bench, completely separate, and I think it's only right that Danny Stewart has to answer for that.
Yeah, no, I would
Oh,
agree.
yeah, I'm not saying he shouldn't have to answer for it. I think the problem is that the league have now made a marker that they are going to step in when coaches do something on the bench that they don't like, and there isn't a set of guidelines to manage it.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
At what point
yeah.
do what point do you draw the line? Who decides how offensive a gender is, who it offends, how it offends them. Because to be offended is a very objectional piece. I understand, racist and elements which are beyond offence. They're criminal in all essences. But there is certain gestures that could be made that technically aren't criminal. Technically, you're just causing offence. If someone was to say, "Give the finger," technically there's nothing illegal. It's offensive, yeah.
I think it's an ill-considered move by Danny, what he did on the bench, and if I'm perfectly honest, I think
Not offend him. I'm just saying that.
I think on the bench is the only thing that Danny has to answer for, and I think the league has dealt with that. I think as much as I don't agree with what was done and how it was handled by the league specifically, I think that's done and that's away. What happens down the tunnel, that's something else entirely. Now, look, I'm not a player. I'm not someone who's been on the bench before. I'm just from a fan's perspective. If I was in their position, that's where I would want the line drawn. Is once I'm off the bench, that's where you stop it.
I think we'll leave that. I think we'll leave that story there, and we'll move on to our next story, which probably caused just as much controversy on social media. We'll get stuck into that one next. Yeah. So, guys, as I mentioned, our next topic of conversation, as I say, was quite heated as well on social media, and that was the news since our last podcast recording that the playoff finals weekend tickets went on sale. They were announced on Friday the 25th of February, and they were released for sale on Monday the 28th of February at 9 a.m. So the Premier Sport Elite playoffs this year will be taking place in Nottingham as normal in the Motorpoint Arena. This year will take place between the 30th of April and the 1st of May. The Premier Sports playoff final weekend will feature the two finals on Saturday, followed by the third and fourth game on Sunday, and the playoff final itself, the final game of the season, on the Sunday afternoon. The reason why, I suppose, a couple of different things have obviously happened over the last few weeks. Obviously, COVID has had an impact on the playoffs. COVID has had an impact on the league itself. So the first thing that obviously happened with the playoffs was the playoffs were shifted by a week. They were moved back an extra week, so now they're being played over the bank holiday weekend in May. And they also then, after that, then it was announced the ticket prices were agreed by the 10 teams. Majority of the teams, apart from I think 3 teams, if I got this correct, 3 teams were selling their own tickets. That was the Cardiff Devils, the Sheffield Steelers, and someone correct me with the last one. Was it Glasgow, or was it one of the Scottish teams were selling theirs, or was it Guildford was selling? I can't remember.
No, Fife are
Coventry
selling theirs directly.
Fife are as well. So there's four teams selling. Yep. The 4 teams selling theirs directly, and then the rest are just getting them purchasing from the website from the Nottingham Panthers. Now, 2 of those teams, we'll go into that in a second, but so let's go for the prices first, and this is what's caused a bit of conversation. Well, not even a bit of conversation; it was quite a lot of conversation. The weekend pass this year, which is valid for the Saturday and Sunday in all games, is priced at £110 plus the £5 arena fee. So in total, it'll be £115. The £5 arena fee will cover both the booking fee and the facilities fee, which is now charged as well. As we mentioned, the Cardiff Devils, Coventry Blaze, Fife Flyers and Sheffield will sell their own tickets directly to their fans. What should be noted was the Sheffield Steelers and the Cardiff Devils originally. Now, I think maybe they removed this after a bit of complaint, but they did initially say that there's going to be an extra £5 charge on top of that, meaning that Sheffield and Cardiff fans had to pay £120 rather than £115 in total. I suppose a lot of people are... Well, first thing I will say is the first thing I seen was obviously families, and I suppose this is the first argument that was put up, and the first argument that it's clear and it's understandable. And Dave, as a parent, you can maybe kind of give your thoughts on this too. I mean, in previous seasons they had a ticket price structure or ticket price tier tier price for the tickets, which meant that there was concession tickets for kids and also for old age pensioners, and if you're in benefits and all that sort of stuff, so that meant that the ticket prices were lower. So there's a discount for children, and then obviously then the regular adult tickets for the full weekend. But I think I seen the comparison where it was like £85. The last playoffs, which were held in 2019 now, rather than it would have been 2019.
Yep.
They were £85 per head. So we are 3 years on from those last prices, and we probably would have imagined the prices may have increased, from each year. The prices, the £85 was actually for the 2020 playoffs, because we were originally going to go, and that was the tickets for that one. So I guess it's a bit of a jump from £85 in 2020 to the 115 now at this point. And obviously then with the other teams then adding on that additional £5. So I think a lot of the arguments were for families saying that it's priced them out completely. If you have 2 adults, 2 kids, or 2 adults and even 1 kid, for the fact that it's going to cost the amount of money it's going to cost for the tickets alone, for the full weekend, which, let's be realistic, it's 3 games, not 4 games, because nobody's interested in that third and fourth place game. So you're playing, it was, someone worked out, it was like something like, was it £35 or £38 per competitive game?
I've got it here, so it's
You've got
£38.33 for 3 competitive games of hockey. Now, if you include the third, fourth place game, it comes to £28.75 to watch 3 competitive games and 1 game where around about 30 to 35 grown men try not to vomit on the ice before the statement final trophy game. So, look, I don't know. Do you want me just to go from there?
Take it away. I mean, the other thing I was just going to mention before we go into it as well is, like, obviously what I was going to mention was, obviously these prices have these are raised prices, quite high prices, and then we move from these high prices into a point where you also have to take into consideration, as we mentioned, the change of date. So you have people who had to shift their hotels to a more expensive time because it's over a bank holiday weekend. People had to move their trains from Scotland down, or buses, whatever that was, that may have increased. Fans from Belfast Giants obviously had to reschedule their flights, again incurring more costs, as had to change their flights to a bank holiday weekend. So I mean, it's a massive cost, and you can see why people were just saying, I feel like I've been priced out for out of this weekend, and it's something I won't be doing. So John, by all means, go what you were going to say.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all been said. It's pricing your bread and butter hockey fans out of playoffs. And look, I'm of the camp where I would love to be going, but there's too much for me on this year. I'm clearly not going to go to playoffs, especially considering it's within a few weeks of potentially my firstborn arriving. If I disappeared off for a weekend, it would cause a lot more problems than just the money for me. But your bread and butter families of 1 or 2 parents plus a couple of kids, there's absolutely no way that I don't think anyone, and Dave, when you come to chat about it, you'll probably confirm it, if you've got any kid between the ages of 5 and 9 that you're going to take to the ice hockey, they've only got a limited attention span unless they are right into the game, unless they're already playing the game effectively at juniors. You're asking someone to spend nearly 40 quid to a ticket to a seat that the kid is. You're probably going to bring an iPad or something for them anyway. We see it at the Giants, and admittedly that's a £15 to £20 ticket. To pay 40 quid for competitive hockey as an adult, if I lived in Nottingham, yes, don't get me wrong, I might spend 40 quid to go. But there's the other problem. There's no day tickets anymore. So you pay for the full weekend, or you pay for nothing. You can't then wait to, even as a local, if the Panthers get through, the number of times that locals wait to see if the Panthers are going to make it through to the grand final and then buy their tickets. That's not going to happen this year, because you can't buy. And now, I say it's not going to happen this year. If there's empty seats, you can guarantee that it'll happen, because they'll want to fill those seats, and they'll say, oh, 25 quid, come in and watch the grand final. We want to fill out the seats because it's going to be live on Premier Sports. And the last thing they want is the grand final, the cap on the end of the season, is covered in empty seats. And the people that you feel sorry for in this are actually the sponsors. Because Premier Sports have put in money into this league this season, into a league which, let's be honest, if what we've heard is to be believed, was potentially on its last legs with COVID. Like, I think we're lucky that Premier Sports came in. We're lucky that we've had the 1 or 2 games broadcast per month, but we're lucky to have their money. And without that, we probably wouldn't have a full 10-team league. They're the ones who are potentially going to miss out. Now, let alone the rest of the fans. Like, there's loads of fans who are going to miss out because of this. Like, even if I didn't have other stuff going on, there is absolutely no chance that with that increase in price and the fact that there's no concession rates, not even a student rate, no child rate, no senior citizen discount, nothing. It's £115 to watch 4 games, let's call it, or nothing. Like, it's mental. And I said on Twitter, one of the first things as soon as these prices were put out, I'm glad I haven't used my free month in Premier yet.
True. Dave, we've alluded to it, and we'll get your thoughts on it. Obviously we talked about the family aspect of this, in terms of, the family costs and stuff. I mean, it's expensive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, sure, the main reason for the tiered ticketing is, as John said, it's to fill the seats. It's to ensure we have the fans. Because if you offer a half price ticket for a child, maybe another adult goes. We're not bringing in. You're not saying, "Oh, I can't go because I've got the boys tonight." You can go. Oh, I'll bring them along. So it brings people out who might not necessarily be there, and that goes for the playoffs. If you can take your entire family for a long weekend, watch some hockey, then you can go. But like for myself, if I was wanting to go really at this point, I would want me and Gemma to go. And obviously we're not going to just find a childminder for the couple of weeks, so we'd want to bring the boys too. And there is no mission that I would be paying £110 for the boys to sit and play on their iPad for three games.
Mm-hmm.
It seems a bit excessive, especially when you see things like the Continental Cup, whenever those teams go away, that do bundle tickets for, I don't know, nearly a weekend for the price of one game for some of these, and it's not, yes, okay, they do need to make money from it. It's the final big hurrah, but there's an element there. If they done a adult ticket for £100 and they done a child's ticket for, I don't know, 70, there's a psychological thing there where you're going, oh, sure, it's £100. You see it over 100.
But I'm still not spending £70 to take a kid to ice hockey to fill a seat that they're not going to be interested in what's in front of them. To me, it's a complete and utter own goal by the league, and you just have to look at the social media response every time. Now, the 10 teams in the league are clearly pushing these tickets because they're being told they have to. You look on Twitter, you look on Facebook, and the teams are still pushing these tickets probably once or twice a week at the minute. Every single time there is 1 or 2 comments. Now, it's not like they're getting the 40 or 50 comments under it like they did the first time this came out, but there's still the 1 or 2 comments going, nope, won't be there, not a chance. It's really looking like this could be a very, very empty NI or Motorpoint arena in Nottingham for playoffs, and that's a real shame. Now, the last thing that you want now, with people, some people will have paid this, some people will have already bought their tickets. What you don't want is the league knee-jerking and making another decision to cut ticket prices or introduce concessions, because then they're in a sticky position of they've sold to some at one rate, now they're going to be left selling to others at another rate. So what's the right decision? Do they take the hit and have empty seats, or do they run the risk of alienating the fans who've already paid this excessive fee, as far as we're concerned, for the fact of trying to fill seats?
Yeah, I mean, last thing I'll just say on this before we move on to our next story is that I feel that if people on Facebook and Twitter and all the social media sites, as you say, John, I mean, there's still, as you say, whenever a post goes up, they do still comment and say this is too expensive, I'm not going to be going, but there's a lot of people I've been talking to who are still going, who are paying, who are still going to it, and the fact of the matter is, there's only going to be the Elite League's only ever going to notice it if the footfall shows that the fact that fans are displeased about the whole thing. But the concern would be that actually it just means that other fans who have tried to go in previous years, who haven't been able to because people got in there and got tickets before them, actually are going to be able to get tickets this year that they haven't been able to get before, and therefore it still looks like it's pretty full, and therefore they're happy because the Elite League will just say, well, people still bought the tickets. Although I will say that there was a comment made today, and it was a good comment. Someone obviously had done a bit of research and a bit of homework on this, but the Elite League put up a post saying, it said something like playoff tickets on sale now, currently selling well or something, or it said something like currently selling well, or it was some comment like that, and someone underneath went, when you're saying selling well, if we look at a week after they went in release previous years, they were sold out, so selling well compared to sold out.
That was going to be my point. I didn't know what you were going to say there, but yeah, I mean, we've seen playoffs sell out within 2 or 3 days. That's clearly not the case. Now, this is what I said, that the league have backed themselves into a corner now at this point, and let's see where it goes. Sorry, but I'll be quite happy watching it on TV from home.
Yeah, I can't see any change. Guys, I'm going to move us on to our next story. John, and I think the next story is yours.
Yep, so this was just a quick one. I mentioned it a second ago when I was talking about journalists, but this was the news that Patrick Mullen is back with the Belfast Giants. We obviously got a bit of a tease last week. The lads at A View from the Bridge put a little post up, which now looking back on it was clearly a bit of gamesmanship from the team. Tweet went up, tweet was taken down, which was, I mean, I said to you guys at the time, I was like, that is clearly Blair Riley. I remembered the PR photo, it was him on the ice, and I remember going, that's definitely Blair Riley. There was this weekend past the games at Guildford, the team did all their post-game interviews in front of Blair's poster that's in the tunnel, the player tunnel. But this was all misdirection, and the return of Patrick Mullen was announced by the team just yesterday. So his first spell with the team was cut short due to COVID. He was obviously here during the 1920 shortened season. Didn't get to finish off, but the D-man will be back. And we say D-man, but we've seen him score some absolute worldy goals as well. One comes to mind of a game against a certain Sheffield Steelers team where he went coast to coast and put a goal very, very nicely between the posts. No better weekend for him to come back if he does end up hitting the ice this weekend for us. But yeah, there we go. Patrick Mullen back in teal. What's your thoughts?
It was obviously deadline day this past week for the Elite League. So players had to be announced. Obviously for signings. I think it was Tuesday. Was it Tuesday the 1st? It was deadline day. So it was actually last week. And obviously the Giants did make the signing and held off on the announcement until yesterday. We also did see obviously the Steelers added forward as well on deadline day. Austrian forward Nico Feldner. Obviously to bolster the forward lines leading up to the last few games of the season too. So, Sheffield bringing a forward, we bringing a defenseman in order to combat that forward maybe. Yeah. It's great to see him back. Good solid defenseman. That's what you want to see. And again, a fresh body to have on the ice ready to go. I think it's a great move.
Definitely.
Yeah, totally agree. I think in my opinion, at this stage of a season, when you look at the top goal scorers and see so many Belfast Giants at the top, the logical sense means go for a D-man. And I think it was a great pickup, and Patrick was amazing for us in that season cut short.
Definitely, 100%. I would agree with you, Dave. As you say, it's perfect. That's a perfect way to put it. I didn't even think of that in terms of you have, we're leading in forwards. We're doing well there already with our goals. Our goal average. So yeah, bring in the defenseman. Although our goal against isn't bad either.
Have you noticed? I don't know if this is official yet, but the press release suggests his number.
What number? Is it not going to be the same as last time?
Looks like 14. So much in the case of Jordan Smotherman. On ahead, Paddy Mullen, number 14.
Very
good.
Does he
need a sponsor?
So 13, 14, 15 competitive games? Maybe we could get a good deal on that.
Yeah.
Maybe, potentially. The other ones of note as well, I think, just to kind of mention some of the other teams who moved with some other signings for before the deadline day. Coventry Blaze obviously as well bringing in a forward in the form of Connor Chullock from University of Virginia, and I think let me just check and see. I think there was one more. Let me just I had it written down.
Fife Glasgow transfer.
Yes.
Oh yeah, there was a weird, a very unusual
Fife. And yeah, the Colton Waltz, was this the Colton Waltz one where he was released from Fife Flyers and then the next day he was signed for the Glasgow Clan, or within not even next day, was it the same? Was it within hours? Yeah, same hours. Within hours.
Within minutes. So the Flyers put out a statement saying he's gone. There'll be no other statement on the matter, and I think within 20 minutes. Within 20 minutes, the Clan had him announced.
We're not talking to you about it anymore.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. It's a past story now, but there was an interesting one I was telling John. I was saying about John about this one as well, where Glasgow and Fife. There was a whole, or Glasgow, was it Glasgow or was it, who had a local young player. No, it was Fife. Oh, I can't remember. I don't matter. It's a past story.
I can't remember the guy's name, but he was with Glasgow. And he is now on a two-way with the Kestrels and the Flyers.
Yeah, there was a whole thing around. They were holding his registration for the elite league as well, which was a bit of an odd one to do. But I think they must have released it if he's going to play, if he's playing two-way.
There's been a change, and whatever's happening now, he's on a two-way with the Kirkcaldy Kestrels and the Fife Flyers.
Yeah, so that's at least that's been resolved, because that was a bit of a strange move that was done there, and I don't know why they were blocking it, but I guess it was so that they couldn't go to their nearest rivals within Fife, I suppose. I guess that's all. Reece Cochran, that was his name.
Cochran.
That's him. That was it for the in terms of the transactions, as per se, transfers. John, do you want to mention the last story?
Just one last one. Look, the reality is that we only record once every 2 weeks, and for as big as the weekend ahead against the Sheffield Steelers is, there is another big game coming next week on the 16th, and the Belfast Giants will face the Cardiff Devils in the Challenge Cup final here at home in the SSE Arena. Guys, it's just to mention this, things are shaping up quite nicely. The Giants seem to have had the number of the Devils in the latter part of the season, as opposed to the early part of the season where the Devils really seem to have our number. Things shape up nicely. Do we expect things to stick to form, or do we go in as this a blank slate? It's a one-off final. It's home advantage Belfast for the first time in the Challenge Cup for a long time. Certainly the Devils will not arrive with a video package ready to go of We Slay Giants. That kind of backfired on them last time. What do you think, Dave? It's a one-shot final.
There's a big thing there that the sort of elephant in the room. Cardiff, I think, rested an awful lot of bodies on yesterday, in that game against Dundee. I think they only turned up to Dundee with 13 skaters. Hence the loss. But I think that was to rest bodies for this coming week. They're trying to make sure they have guys that were maybe on questionable injuries, that they're going. I think they'll end up resting as many of them boys this weekend coming as well to come in as fresh as possible. They're looking at it now that this is probably their best chance of a major piece of silverware. If you look at the league, they are struggling, and points wise they're starting to fall a bit adrift. This is a one-off game. If they can rest the bodies, come into that game fully healthy, that could be a game changer, because the Giants aren't going to take their foot off the gas, because they need these games, these weekends. They see these two games against Sheffield, they're going to be battered and bruised, and they're going to have to take that through into a cup final midweek. So it's going to be tough. Home advantage, though, it'll make it anybody's game. We can almost guarantee that the building will be bouncing. As much as everybody complained about midweek final, I don't think it stopped the locals from buying tickets.
Let's be perfectly honest. Let's be perfectly honest. It wasn't locals who were giving off about the midweek final. So once the date of the final was announced a couple of weeks back, it was very clear that the vocal opposition to it was the Cardiff side. let's be perfectly honest, we have a public holiday here the next
Yep.
day. So a Wednesday game on that weekend, which, I mean, it's opportunistic that it's fallen on that weekend, because let's be perfectly honest, we're big proponents here that the Challenge Cup is a tin pot trophy and it should be decided long before this stage of the season. I mean, don't get me wrong, if we win it, I'll say it's the most important trophy of the entire year. But it was very clearly the Cardiff fans were given off. Admittedly, it's a couple of days off work for them. But look, guys, it's a holiday in Belfast on Paddy's Day. Come on over and have the crack.
Yeah.
Like, what are you complaining about? But Dave, you make a really good point, actually. And while you were chatting away, I was hurriedly looking at the fixtures. Cardiff only have one game between now and the Challenge Cup final, which is against Coventry.
Yeah.
We, on the other hand, the Belfast Giants, have three games.
Yep.
2 against the Sheffield Steelers, which are going to be tough games, and 1 away to Dundee, who have taken 2 massive results against the Sheffield Steelers to put us into first place after this last weekend. We don't have an easy run into this final, Marty.
No, we really don't. You're right, and obviously, as we mentioned earlier on, at the head of the episode, we're talking about the fact that these games are important. 3 points is 3 games is 6 points. 6 points is needed. 6 points is 6 points, and we want to keep that lead going. Is there an argument you could have to say that obviously we're playing against Sheffield? If we take 4 points off Sheffield in the first two games, we take our foot off the gas a bit in that third game on Sunday? Do we not?
Foot on throat.
But do they decide to do that?
You take those 4 points against Sheffield, the last thing you want to do is lose 2 points in Dundee.
And that's a good argument.
You get to the end of the season, lose by 2 points.
It's not even that. Momentum is momentum. Like it's a tough weekend. It doesn't matter who you're playing. 3-3 is a tough weekend. We want 6 points. We really need 6 points. But what you don't want to do is lose momentum and go in a couple of days later into a Challenge Cup final after a loss against Dundee, where you have lifted your foot off the gas and it doesn't go your way because guys are out with the winning mentality. Foot on throat. 6 points
the other thing,
and a Challenge Cup trophy.
I think the other thing, the 2 important things also to talk about before we move on from this story, there's 2 very key elements that will play a massive part in this game on Wednesday, against Cardiff. The first thing is obviously we talked about it already, midweek game, but we know already from looking at the seating charts and stuff in the arena, it is practically already a sellout. I think it was the last I'd heard, there was around about less than 200 tickets left, and those tickets were over in the west, in the west stand. In the away section. So again, it's an amazing amount of fans that we're going to have in the arena on Wednesday night. The last most important part to think about, and we can't forget about, is the fact that if the Dell of Belfast City shows up on the night, it's going to play a big part. So we can only hope the Dell of Belfast City is fully charged and ready to go.
Not touching it. Do you know what? I'm not touching it, not because I don't agree with you, but if it goes the other way, I don't want any recording of me saying it the other way around. We'll just take your audio and use it against you.
With that, guys, I think we'll move on. We do have a penalty box segment for the period 1, and we have one story to lead on, so we'll move swiftly into our penalty box segment. Okay, our penalty box segment is just a coverage of any notable bans, hits, or I guess any actions of note that have come from the DOPS, the Department of Player Safety. We have this is actually going back to a story we had previous podcast. John, I'm going to switch over to you. This is the official statement made from the Blackburn Hawks following the massive bans that we talked about in the previous in the last episode.
Yep, so clearly we had a very, very quick chat where, again, we're the first ones to accept that EIHL is well outside of our wheelhouse, but we couldn't ignore these bans when they were handed out by the EIHL at the time. You had 2 players and a coach who were banned for multiple seasons. Now, the Blackburn Hawks have made an announcement that they went to the EIHL appeals panel. They have appealed the multi-year bans that were handed out to Rhys Kearney-Whitter, Callum Riddick, and to coach Ollie Lomax. The result of that has been that all 3 have seen an 85% reduction in those bans. Reese Kearney-Whitter and Callum Riddick, the two players, will be ineligible to play for the remainder of this season, but will be eligible to register as players for the 2022-23 season. So effectively, they are sitting out the rest of this season. Coach Ollie Lomax, who it seemed like had taken the harshest of all these decisions with a multi-year ban on coaching at any level. He has also seen an 85% reduction in his suspension. He is ineligible to coach for the remainder of this season at any level, but will be eligible to register as a coach for, similarly to the players, the 2022-23 season. The club makes statement that they've learned lessons from the process, including the importance of setting a good example for younger fans, junior players, and with appreciating that they have a duty of care to protect the welfare and safety of players and the honour and respect within the game. So that they have accepted and been contritional, it seems, through the actions. And we went through it in detail before. Go back and listen to the last episode where we talked a little bit about it. Again, I would say very clearly, if you want an in-depth analysis of this, there's two prime places to head. Is the 4,000 Counting guys, and very, very specifically the Banners on the Wall. They will have much more in-depth chat about it. And what I see as being the biggest takeaway from all this is that while these bans have been reduced, which seems to be the right decision, there is still a problem with the transparency of the decisions, because as far as I could tell, the only statement on these reductions has come from the Blackburn Hawks. The EIHA themselves haven't actually come out and said what's actually happening. They've left it to the team to announce, which isn't just the best way. And I think for as much moaning as we do about DOPS, let's be honest, there's probably the same thing that you could have with the relevant section over in the EIHA as well. Guys, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, or if it's worthwhile just pushing on from here.
I think you're right. I think it's just a good roundup of kind of where the things stand, and I don't think there's any more. I think you've mentioned it well. You've got two other great sources of information out there, so definitely go over to those two sources and give it a little bit more of a listen for a bit more information. Okay, guys. With that, then that will take us to the end of our period 1, and we will move swiftly on to our period 2 of hockey.
Hello and welcome to period 2. This is where we'll talk about hooky. I don't know where that came from. Hockey from all around the world.
Belfast Giants on the brain. You're just thinking about Lewis Hooking this weekend coming.
Yeah, that's it.
We have Knocky news and we have hooky news now.
Hooky news. I don't know where that came from.
Get the t-shirts printed.
So we'll talk about hockey from all around the world in this segment, and we have a few ones that are obviously pretty topical and newsworthy, which we'll cover in a second. I'm going to take mine first because it's a nice story, and we'll start with a nice one, and I'm hoping there's another nice one in there.
Good. You're going to let your period just do this, Dave?
Yeah, no, there's one more.
High and then...
There's another nice one there as well, one of yours, John, that is technically lighthearted. So we'll start with mine, which is the retirement of Mickey Koivu's number for the Minnesota Wild. Similar sort of situation to Pecorini, first proper retirement of a number in franchise history, and it in my opinion, couldn't go to a better player. Led the team as captain for 8 years. That could be a bit too many. A number of years. And
that's that in-depth analysis you come to for us.
That's exactly it. But was probably, for his run with the Wild, one of the best power forwards in the NHL, filling a role that was sorely missed in the Wild's early history. They had the Wild's early history. They obviously had a lot of extreme talent and guys like your fella, name escapes me, but they were able to score goals, but they didn't have any depth. They didn't have any sort of defensive depth through the entire team, and Mickey Koivu was the start of that, and has really set a marker for captains for the Wild ever since, and this will be his his retirement of his jersey this weekend on Sunday.
Awesome.
So there's nothing really to talk about there. So number 9 will be retired and be hung in the rafters forevermore.
Hang on. 2 seconds. Where is it? I've got a stick somewhere. Hang on.
He's got a stick. Ow. This is great.
Marion Gabbert.
Can't find it.
That was the
I
name.
had a mini hockey stick somewhere, and now I can't find it. It was sitting somewhere. I don't know. Anyway,
I remembered the person I was wanting to talk about. Marion Gabbert was the player. We had that skilled type of player at the start of this. He was one of our first big signings in the opening year. So, but yes, definitely. I think that we talked about it before. The way the NHL treats retirement numbers is done properly. That's taken 10 years to find one. The Nashville was 11, 12 years.
Yep.
So there's proper thought in that to make those decisions. So yeah, big shout out. I'm sure he's listening. So we'll move on to the more topical, less cheery topics. We will go to Marty for some Russian European hockey news.
yeah.
If you want to make a run for it, I've also put another tag on piece that John has moved out of hockey news that is related. So
Okay.
if you want to start with yours, I'll add mine.
Yeah. Of course. So obviously, we know obviously with what the current situation that's going on at the moment in Ukraine, with Russia invading the Ukraine, and the devastation that's being caused there. Obviously, the reaction across the world is a lot of condemnation against Russia and the Russian, the I suppose the Putin's decisions to do what he did, and as part of that, not only has there been obviously governments doing their things in terms of shutting down money and stuff, movement and all that kind of things, but a lot of the big big companies, organizations, as well as brands as well, have all started pulling out of Russia and putting in place restrictions as well. And the NHL, similar to other leagues across the world, so the likes of the Olympic Committee as well were a part of this. We had the likes of the FIFA as well play a part of their part in this too as well, and different bits and pieces are going on. They have put in information, or the NHL have ordered all clubs to cease contact with the Continental Hockey League over the Ukraine invasion. So any dealings between the NHL and the Continental Hockey League, so the KHL, has been suspended. The NHL did tell its teams to cease any contact with their counterparts and any Russian-based agents as part of the suspension of movement within the league. They will continue this as long as they need to. It's obviously difficult for any Eastern European players who are playing in the NHL, particularly for any Russian players as well who are wanting to move to the NHL. There's going to be a lot of different issues there around not being able to move, and kind of those kind of bits and pieces that are happening in terms of the usual yearly scouting that they would do for potential players and stuff for things like the draft and everything else. So that will obviously all be impacted as well by this move that has been made. Also announced this week was the NHL has suspended its relationship with its business partners in Russia, as well as any social media and digital media sites, and as well as that, all broadcasting agreements have been completely terminated as of this week too. So no longer any games being shown across in Russia. All ad revenue and everything else as well has been completely taken away too. We don't know what that's worth or what that how impact that will have, but again, it's just another organization, the NHL, a big organization, showing its support and its condemnation, similar to others. On top of that as well, I know there's another bit of a story that's put in here. I'm just going to continue with it if that's okay. I think maybe John, did you put this in? The two teams pulling out, or this is Dave's story, the two teams pulling out of the KHL. Yeah. Two teams did pull out of the KHL to protest against the Russian invasion as well. Why did you have to give me such hard names to pronounce?
I know them.
The Jokerit Helsinki pulled out of the 2021-2022 Continental Hockey League playoffs on this past Friday. So they finished their regular season with the second best record. It was second best record in the Western Conference, and they were slated to play Spartak in the 7th seed beginning on March 1st, but they have pulled out. Finland, Helsinki is obviously from Finland's capital city, and they will continue continue its season wouldn't be possible, obviously, because of that. The other team then was where is the second team?
So Latvian
Dynamo
team,
Riga.
Dynamo Riga.
Dynamo Riga then is the second team, also then similar announcement put out to say that they made a decision to withdraw from the KHL, again expressing a clear position of the club's management in such a military and humanitarian crisis. We do not see any opportunity for cooperation within the Continental Hockey League. So again, we've got another team pulling out there of the KHL as part of their defiance against what has happened as well in the in Russia.
Probably also worthwhile mentioning that just after the last recording as well, that the EIHL came out and have also suspended all Russian and Belarusian national and club teams from EIHL competition until further notice. So this was in
stripped them of the
direct
accreditation,
response.
didn't
Yep. So this was in direct response to a letter which was signed by multiple national bodies, which included Ice Hockey UK. Who were co-signed to a letter to the EIHL requesting, demanding that Russia and Belarus be stripped of any EIHL accreditation as well. So they nationally they will not compete. And whilst the Olympics are already finished, the Paralympics are ongoing. And while clearly we don't cover all the Paralympics, there would have been Paralympic sled hockey would have been there, and Russia initially were going to follow the same sort of rules as they have because of their anti-doping history. They were to be allowed to fly under the Olympic flag, but since then the International Paralympic Committee also made the decision to bar all Belarusian and Russian athletes from competing at the Paralympics, so they will not be there or competing for medals at all.
Yep. My story obviously obviously leads in a bit, I think, to your story, John, as well. But one last bit I was going to talk about, which I think does actually come into yours, and I'll pass it over to you. Is obviously with the whole NHL stance around, their stance against Russia and what the moves they've made. It's obviously put one of the key players, one of the biggest named players, I suppose, in the NHL, Ovechkin. It's obviously put him in a place where obviously media have been targeting him for his comments and his beliefs in terms of what he thinks in terms of obviously the invasion that's currently going on. It's a very sensitive issue, obviously, as we know, because obviously there's some talk around how safe his family is and stuff in Russia, and then there's a couple of other bits and pieces, but there's been a non-committal comments and stuff, I suppose, from Ovechkin, but I think that does come under your story, does it?
Yeah, so much in a similar vein, because Alex hasn't really come out and spoken against the situation that's going on in Ukraine. NHL Hall of Famer Dominic Hasek decided to come out very publicly last week, on the 26th of February, just at the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and called out Ovechkin for any neutral observations or lack of statement that he had made. I won't repeat the comment or the name that Hasek called Ovechkin because we like to think that we're still a family sort of orientated podcast. But since then, nothing came. There's still been no definitive statement from Alex Ovechkin for or against or whatever, however you like it. But he is a major voice. He's a major international sportsman, and you would expect him to say something. He hasn't, and Dominic Hasek has come back again and has demanded that the NHL suspend all Russian players immediately. Some see where he's coming from, others are making, Marty, the point that you've made, that maybe these guys can't make a statement because of the position that they're being put in. Hasek has since then put a statement out for all Russian players in the NHL. He said that I'd prefer to suspend you because by performing on the ice you are also advertising your country and its actions, war, against the sovereign democratic country of Ukraine and its people to whom you are causing terrible suffering. However, the NHL has a different view at the moment. If you are not indifferent to the fact that the army of your country kills hundreds or thousands of people in Ukraine every day, I will ask you to show it and officially donate every dollar from your contract to humanitarian aid to the Ukrainian people. So Dominic Hasek, I think, This is a tough one, guys. I think he's saying what a lot of people want to hear. Let's not for a minute suggest that any of these Russian players are going to have a massive impact, but we're seeing here in the UK, we're seeing the impact on sport just today that the situation in Ukraine is having on other sports. You've got football, the Chelsea situation, with Roman Abramovich being subjected to sanctions today, with the club effectively being stripped from him while he was trying to sell it. Does Hasek have a point, Marty?
I mean, again, I suppose it's a massive difference. You're just feeding back to that thing you're talking about, the Chelsea thing. I mean, I was quite surprised because I read the story today about the Chelsea and about the Chelsea situation, and actually they've been stopped from even being able to sell any tickets moving forward. They're not allowed to sell any tickets for any remaining home games. Not allowed to sell any merch. Have to close their store.
Yeah,
I suppose it's linked in. All the profits go straight in. So yeah, I see what you mean. In some ways, what he's saying, I get what he's saying, and by the NHL allowing the Russian players to continue playing, it's making a statement to say that it's not making a statement at all. It doesn't say that they're condoning it or anything, because obviously their actions that they're taking in terms of suspending and also terminating contracts and stuff with everything that's going on is showing that the NHL has a stance on this matter. I think the difficulty does come into the fact that, like, as we were kind of saying, it's difficult. I think, the Russian players who are playing in the NHL, as I already mentioned, we've got big names like Ovechkin, and I'm sorry to keep going back to Ovechkin, but he is a big name, a big player, and he also is probably one of the biggest Russian stars, I suppose, in the world in terms of, a professional sportsman, in terms of, what he does. So again, should they all be paying out exactly all their money? No, but should they? And again, it's a difficult situation. I said it already, and it is a difficult situation. We've seen what's happening in Russia itself to the people. There's been thousands of people, thousands upon thousands of ordinary people in Russia who are being detained and held for their political views, in the fact that they don't agree with what's going on. And if you have a view that goes against what is being said in Russia, you're being detained and you can be held in prison for up to 15 days initially, and then after that up to 5 years. They're in a difficult position.
Yeah, they are, certainly. To bring it back to the hockey element, clearly Ovi is he's a massive character. He is now a subject of some media controversy because of everything that's going on. Another guy that we're going to talk about in the next period, Jaromir Jagr. Alex Ovechkin just a day ago tied Jagr for goals, third most goals in all time with 766 goals. Now, Jagr then tweeted about this, and because Ovechkin actually missed a shot where he could have leapfrogged him and gone into third in all time. Jagr clearly has a position on this whole situation in Ukraine, which we're going to talk about in the next period. But he's still engaging with Ovi. He's making a point there to, through all this, still be conversing with this guy and concentrating on the game. Dave, is it important for them to actually concentrate in the game rather than anything else, or does the political side trump what's going on the ice?
Yeah, so definitely at the minute, we're still at the point where, these guys are hired. They're not owners. They're not bringing money from. It's not the same as the oligarchs. They're not bringing technically ill-gotten gains from one country to another to then buy things. He's getting his money from playing in the US, being an NHL player, and he's plying his trade in America, and he has done for decades. Well, a decade.
A decade.
Yeah, a decade. And he, I think at this stage, yes, 100%. It's all, he just needs to focus on the sport. The problem comes in is when what we were chatting before the podcast is that there is on the horizon the chance that the US will strip any Russian worker of their visa, in which case the likes of Alex Ovechkin will not be able to play in the NHL because the government has made a statement. Now, we were talking, he's probably naturalized, probably counts as a US citizen, but they may ask him to denounce his Russian citizenship, which will go down like a lead balloon. So that is something to bear in mind. Yes, 100% right now, he has to focus on hockey, do what he's paid for. and I understand that there's if he speaks out, he puts his family at risk. But there may come a point where he is forced to choose. And the choice may be made for him by the U.S. government.
Yeah, it's difficult. Just one last thing before we move on, I guess. Just to kind of come back, just to kind of what you're saying there as well. I mean, it is difficult. It's complicated because we do have the legislation that's going on in Russia. That if Russia passes it, means that obviously people will face up to 15 years in prison no matter what. They'll try and get them, for that, no matter whenever they return. So people are wanting to return to their hometown, their home in Russia at some point when they retire. It's going to make it more difficult for them. But you've got like the likes of last year where you had Panarin from the New York Rangers, who faced a lot of intimidation after he came out in support for a long-term critic of Putin. He's not. I suppose his stance is that he's anti-Putin, and he came under fire for that, for obviously being a Russian that's had that stance. What was interesting as well, which I read this week, from an NHL agent called Dan Milston, who was born in the Ukraine and has a number of clients who are Russian and Belarusian players. Obviously his things, and what he is saying is that the comments that was being made, the comments that had been made towards these players, the Russian and Belarusian players, he feels, speaking from a Ukrainian point of view, he knows his home is being bombed, and he's speaking to friends back home, but he still believes, and knowing the people he's working with, that the people are picking on the wrong crowd. The people are picking on the wrong thing in terms of what they're focusing on. People should be focusing on what the matter is. And yes, these people, I guess what he's saying is, and from a Ukrainian point of view, and from being a person from Ukraine, he's in agreement that his clients who are Russian and Belarusian are in a very, very difficult position, in a difficult place, because he knows how dangerous it is for their lives to mention and become critical of a full government, a dictator, pretty much. So yeah, tough.
Just added there very quickly, just before we move off this topic and on to something a bit more cheery. Has anybody seen Alex Ovechkin's Instagram?
Not since the war over or something, or no war or something comment?
No, it's him and Putin.
Oh.
Recently or
now? Currently?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So his
profile,
his profile photo is still him and old Vlad.
I didn't know that.
There could be an element that maybe something a little bit more neutral might work.
Well,
he doesn't have to support one another.
The relationship between Alex and Putin is well known. We should have put that straight up at the very, very top of this. They are friends. They spend a lot of time together when Ovi is over in Russia. And look, Ovi has made no secret of the fact that he is a proud Russian. He has gone over and above the NHL with the Olympic band before, and has gone to represent his country. He is a proud Russian himself, but like Marty said, and like other people have said, he's now in a very difficult position. He will have his close held beliefs, and those are for him to make right with. Those are for his team to make right with as well. And you feel like a decision is quickly coming, and whether it's made by him or whether it's made for him, we just don't know.
So we'll move off those cheery notes. John, you can have your one that might lighten our day a wee bit.
Yeah, lighten the day a little bit here in the middle of the podcast. Doesn't feel like it's the middle. It feels like it should be the end of the podcast, but never mind. Phil Kessel had himself a bit of a night recently there last week. If anyone doesn't know, Phil Kessel is currently in the middle of a fairly serious Ironman challenge. He has gone, I don't know how many games now, 956 consecutive NHL games without missing a single game. Things got a little bit more complicated for him this last week because his wife was expecting a child. And was expecting a child on the day that the Arizona Coyotes were playing the Detroit Red Wings. So to make sure that he didn't snap his Ironman run, the Yotes in Detroit let him play the first shift of the game, where amazingly he got a shot on goal as well. He came off the ice on a line change, straight down the tunnel, and got on a chartered flight that the Yotes had sitting on the tarmac for him to get him home in time for the birth of his child.
Surely that shouldn't
so,
have been. Surely that shouldn't have been counted. That's not fair.
He was on the ice. He's on the game sheet. He played minutes on the ice, or a minute, 90 seconds maybe. And yeah, the Iron Man streak continues. Now he's still got a few to hit. Keith Yandel, who is currently sitting at 977 consecutive games, and I believe, is there someone else that he is just behind as well? Doug Jarvis sits at 964 games. So he is sitting third place, I think, in all time as far as Ironman streaks are concerned. So I mean that's mental. But this is the sort of thing you'll love to absolutely see. I mean, this is if there was going to be anything that was going to snap an Ironman streak, it's going to be the birth of a child. Like totally, anyone could totally understand that. Clearly, this means a lot to to anyone who's doing it, but clearly it means a lot to Kessel. He wants to maintain this run, and the team gave him the option. The team have taken a hit on that because they're putting him on the ice, they're putting him on the team sheet. They're down a guy as soon as he's played his first shift. They're playing the rest of the game without a guy on their bench. So fair play to them for letting that happen and going ahead with that.
Totally, totally. That's amazing. Can't pay their rent, but they can pay for a charter flight for.
Absolutely, yeah. They can't wait to see. I wonder if they can afford that when they're in their new 5,500 seater arena on a university campus next season.
Awesome. That was a nice one to end, a bit better than the previous thing. So we will. I have no penalty box. Is that right? Awesome. No penalty box. I think we can move on to period 3.
Period 3 then is our general Knocky news. Knocky news is where we throw up anything and everything else in the world of hockey that we think needs a little bit of a mention. Guys, I'm going to go quickly and go on to this whole sort of vein of conversation that we've had through period 2. We're going to concentrate on the hockey community's response to the situation in Ukraine. And guys, I mentioned just quickly a second ago about Jaromir Jagr having a very clear position on the situation. Marty, you spotted this one. Jagr is taking, measures into his own hands.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the I suppose one of the bigger of the stories. Obviously, there's a number of different local teams and a number of teams right across the world who are doing their part, which we'll talk about briefly in a few minutes as well. But obviously, Jaromir Jagr, obviously everybody knows him really well. Third leading goal scorer in NHL history. He owns a team in the Czech Extraliga in the Czech Republic. He has helped raise over £160,000 this past Tuesday for refugees from Ukraine who fled to the Czech Republic. The money was raised through ticket sales for a regular season final game, which was moved to the O2 Arena in Prague to draw in more people. So they drew in a crowd of around 14,512 into the 18,000 seat arena, with others buying virtual seats as well, so making it an eventual sellout. Both the game, also as well before the game, a video of the NHL Commissioner Gary Bateman had also pledged his support for Jagr and the cause that he was doing within the arena, and the NHL announced that it was donating 68,000 in honour of Jagr's number 68 shirt to the fundraising effort. The 68,000 was part of the 160,000 overall total, and we should say it's dollars as well. Great gesture. I think it was a great. It just shows the hockey world obviously putting their support and putting their full support into what's going on in whatever ways they can. Obviously, if we look locally, if all teams across, and I suppose some teams in the Elite League doing their parts as well. Some small bits and pieces of people are doing. We've seen this past weekend and the weekend before, we've seen the Scottish teams forfeit the traditional national anthem there in Scotland, and instead changing it over to the Ukrainian national anthem and playing that at the start of each game. So again, little small gestures, but again, worth noting. We also have the Nottingham Panthers this week, who have announced a they put out an announcement to say the Nottingham Panthers stand with the rest of the world in being appalled at the current events taking place in the Ukraine. It's important for us to show our support for the people of the Ukraine whilst helping in our own small way in whatever way we can. In order to do this, we have come up with the following ways to show our support and raise some much needed funds. We have worked with our jersey supplier and ice locker to produce a Ukrainian themed jersey available for fans to purchase, with all profits going to the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. We're raffling off the full set of game-worn black jerseys from the 2021-2022 season, and again, all profits will go to the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. And we'll be looking at a possibility of holding a supplies collection at games against the Sheffield Steelers on March 19th. Obviously, the fans are taking part in this initiative, and there is the jersey is available to see if you haven't seen it, and it is just the Ukrainian flag, which looks pretty well, if I do say so myself. So stick tap to the Nottingham Panthers for doing that too. We should also note in the EIHL, a very, I suppose, well-known team for the Elite League fans, and that is the Basingstoke Bison, announcing their fundraiser as well for the people of the Ukraine. The Basingstoke Bison are saddened obviously by the shocking events and atrocities that are happening in Ukraine, and on the evening of the 19th of March, the Bison family will proudly show off their support for the people of the Ukraine, wearing dedicated jerseys as well, one-off special jerseys in the Ukrainian colours to show the support. The jerseys then will be worn on the Saturday game at the home game versus Peterborough Phantoms, and then a special range of merchandise and pucks and stuff will be on sale. The shirt off the back prize and the jerseys themselves will be presented on the ice, and also then obviously the money for this will be going towards obviously Disaster Emergency Committee Ukraine Appeal as well. The manufacturers also should say who manufacture the jerseys are also making a donation as well for that, and again their jerseys, they have shown a picture of their jersey too, and again no surprise, it is in the Ukrainian colours of blue and yellow, and again it looks really well. So again, just a small roundup of some of the things that are happening, some of the little bits of support that are from fans, and I think
another one in
can
there,
agree.
Marty, well.
Oh, did you? I didn't see that one. Let me just check that one. Sorry,
also.
Sheffield Steelers
I was gonna
2.
mention,
Sorry.
So the Steelers this last weekend.
Yep, Sheffield
had
Steelers 2.
Two special jerseys. So I think they wore warm-up yellow and blue jerseys.
Apologies, yep.
But then during the game against the Dundee Stars, I can show you just here, for anyone watching on YouTube, they had a special logo on the front of their jersey with the Steelers logo coloured in blue and yellow. We'll throw up links to the photos and things of that onto the website as well. But well done to those guys for doing that as well.
They will be raffling off. Was it this past weekend, or is it this coming up weekend?
This last week.
This past weekend, yeah, because we're playing us this weekend. Duh. Yeah, so this past Saturday, the Sheffield Steelers did raffle off 20 warm-up and 20 game-worn shirts, and all proceeds were donated to the association. Again, the same association that Nottingham have passed on to the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. So again, sorry for missing out the Sheffield one there. It wasn't on purpose. It was by accident. I just didn't see it. But again, great bits of news and bits of stories that are coming out of just support that people are showing.
Yep, definitely. Guys, we'll leave that to one side. Obviously, we've done quite a lot of chat about this, and no doubt there'll be more chat in following podcasts as we go on. But like we've said, well done to everyone for all the efforts that they're making as things go on. But guys, let's get back into our sort of wheelhouse here. And Marty, you had noticed these, and I had kind of picked up on them before. We love a jersey here, and we like a different jersey too. We like when people maybe step out of their comfort zone a little bit and do something a bit different. But it was a little bit awkward when Glasgow announced last week that they'd be wearing special jerseys, and I think we all thought the same thing. They did better on their one-offs than they did with the rebrand. So these were special jerseys for, now let me get this right, for the Ronald McDonald House charity, where they took Clangus, probably, aside from Finn, probably the best known and most loved mascot in the Elite League, and put some awesome multicoloured hair on him and put him slap bang in the middle in not a small logo, a good sized logo on their jersey. Guys, this is a cracking jersey.
It is.
Yeah, I love the jersey. I just think that Hamish, is it Hamish? Is that what they call him?
Clangus.
No, that's
Clangus. Sorry,
You just said a Scottish name. I mean,
Clangus.
That might be the
That's
most
what you call
racially
the guy
insensitive
in the
thing
Lions
I've
suit
ever
in
said on
Edinburgh.
this podcast.
The guy in the suit. Yeah, you're right. That's exactly where I came from. The Clangus on the front, just the color. Oh, it's just everything about it. It just jumped out at me. I really loved it, and I know you guys weren't so sure about the rest of the design, the dark navy and whatever else, but I like the color. The color. The colors going right round through the back.
Contrast.
The color contrasting is great, and I love the little horns on the back of the shirt as well, just up or above the names as well. I think it's really class little touch as well. I think these jerseys were brilliant.
It definitely looks better than
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson on the front of their current jerseys. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I had a choice between Clangus and Mel Gibson, I would go with Clangus every single time.
Twice on Sundays.
So, guys, that rounds off period 3. We will throw up the link for people to have a look at those one-off clan jerseys as well. This brings us very nicely on to the star segment. So the star segment is where we get the chance to highlight someone or something that we think needs a bit of a special mention. Right, so I have to throw my hands up yet again and say this was not on my radar. As soon as we finished recording 2 weeks ago, I completely, once again, forgot about the star competition, as I always do. Mark, really sorry. I want to know the background as to why you were so keen to vote on this one in particular. It seems like an odd one for you to get really emotional about, but the nominations from the last podcast, there was only 2 of them. It was a battle of the netminders. I went for Pekka Rinne, and Aaron went with Belfast Giants' own Jackson Whistle. The result being that Aaron and Jackson Whistle have taken the victory with 64% of the vote. Marty, I see that you have a comment that you are to read out on behalf of Mark.
Yes, so you were saying you want to know the reason why he was so adamant about it. I will read out his exact statement on why. So he wanted to say, "Hi Marty, for the star segment, just wanted to mention to say thank you to John for putting up the poll for a change. Really didn't want.
Really didn't want to words this weekend. We're gonna have words."
Really didn't want to miss out on the chance to vote for Peke as a way of thanking him for deflecting Patrick Holmquist's behind-the-net shot from his own net for Pittsburgh in 2017, allowing them to win the cup. So that's the reason why, because he voted for Peke Rinne as well. So yes, he did. That's the exact reason. He also has He also put a nomination in, but I feel like I want to say this nomination after you've put your star segment nomination in, because who you've nominated and this person it's an interesting contrast. So you go for yours first.
Right, so guys, there's only one nomination sitting on the board. Obviously we've got another one from Mark, but guys, given everything that has happened over the last 2 weeks, if you've in any way been watching the news or keeping an eye on events, I've come away from hockey for this one, and I've gone for the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky. Guys, I continue to be incredibly amazed by this guy's fortitude in the face of what he's facing. The fact that this last week alone, apparently, he has survived 3 separate assassination attempts, and yet continues to be an absolute badass in front of what would appear to be this oncoming storm from Russia. And let alone, one of the key facts that came out, or one of my favourite facts, everyone knows that he was a comedian who played the president, who then stood for election and became the president. I mean, that in itself is incredible. It's quite a story, and is now a wartime president. My favourite little snippet that came out through everything was, did you know that not only was he a comedian, but he was also a voice actor? And he is the Ukrainian voice of Paddington Bear. Now, that alone, to me, that's a star nomination right there. But like, all joking aside, for everything that's going on right now, my nomination is Volodymyr Zelensky.
His life story could make a fantastic movie. Not even just his current life story, his family's. His grandfather was the only surviving member of his family during the Nazi occupation of the Ukraine, and he's a Jew growing up under the Soviet Union. For not one small part, his his entire family had to go through a lot to get where they are. He's having obviously go through a lot right now, and he's showing some more fortitude than any leader currently in the world, and is just one unbelievable person. Every time you see him talk, he's doing it with such composure, with such immense pressure all around him.
And also so much passion as well for his country, so you have to say that.
Absolutely. Yep. So, Marty, you said that Mark has a nomination as well?
Yeah, so whenever you're putting this poll up, it'll be an interesting one. It'll be Zelensky versus John Ford. So let me explain why. let me explain why. So Mark wanted to say, in order to make up for my comments to John, I do want to nominate him as my star for this week. I usually ignore the interval entertainment at the Belfast Giants games to head to the bar, but this past week I just had to stay and cheer him on as he was picked to shoot as a shootout skills. He had me on the edge of my seat. Your hockey skills were obviously noted on that night. For anybody who doesn't know, our own John Ford took part in the shootout challenge that happens on the period 1 break within the Belfast Giants, where you shoot the number of pucks towards the goal to try and get them through the. What's the company? It's the computer repair. Isn't it the?
Yeah, it's the refurbish.
Yeah.
Is it refurbish me or something? They're
Refurb.
Called? I don't know. I wasn't given a pre-match briefing.
I
was 2 for 10.
2 goals.
The guy that I was against, not for 10. So
big goose egg.
Yeah, smashed it. So I did.
So
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for my invite to round 2. However, I am starting to get worried because there are only a few more weekends, and I am missing a couple of them. So I really hope that I don't have to sort of withdraw and give my opposition a bye through to the next round.
Can one of us not stand in for you?
I mean, I might have to leave my driving license with you, but I don't know.
So this week's sorry John, I know this is what you usually say, but I'm just going to say this week's star segment, the poll will go up whenever it does go up, will be John Ford. I decide it goes up. John Ford's nomination of Zelensky versus the fans' vote of the hockey player John Ford. So interesting one.
Yeah, no matter what, I win.
True. Oh, that's a good point. Guys, with that, that takes us to the end of our star segment, and we have no overtime segment this week. We've nothing else to put in. And not only do we not have any overtime segment, but because Aaron is not here this week, we do not have any ABCs of hockey either. So that takes us to the end of our show. So let's end the show as we normally do, and just give a call out to you guys. Get involved, give us a shout, get involved with the chat, send us your questions, send us your ideas, your stories. You can catch up with us on social media at Door14 Hockey on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Check out our previous episodes. All the content from this episode as well will go onto our website at door14hockey.com, where you can look back at some of the old episodes, as well as, I say, all of those stories we mentioned and those images of those jerseys and stuff we will put up on our website. If you haven't done so already, give us a follow or subscription on your podcast player of choice. Hit that like button, give us a rating if you can, and even leave a comment if you feel anyway obliged to do so. Comments. Spotify have added comments. There you go. Add on a comment to Spotify, as we are on Spotify as well. With that takes us to the end of this week's show. We are looking forward to this coming up weekend, doubleheader against the Sheffield Steelers. Let's hope the Giants can pull those games and get those points, those important points. But more importantly, we are looking forward to midweek. We are looking forward to March 16th, SSA Arena, Challenge Cup final. Very limited tickets left. If you haven't got your ticket, try and see if you can get one. Come along. It's going to be a great night of hockey. It's a Challenge Cup final. It's going to be immense. So you have to be there. With that, we will sign off for this week. I'm Marty.
I'm Dave.
I'm John. Come on, Giants!
Have a great week.